Hello YouTube, this is Mirza. This video is a summary of my book, Will You Not Reason? A Concordance of God's Arguments in the Qur'an, which can be downloaded for free from my website, willyouNotReason.com. Many of the insights in this book are from the excellent work by Sam Garens titled The Qur'an, A Complete Revelation, which can be downloaded for free from his website, Qur'anite.com. The translations are from Brother Garens' work as well. Introduction. The Quran claims to be God's final revelation to mankind, yet those who most loudly proclaim to hold to the Quran, sadly, are often ignorant of its contents. I have conducted a sincere and honest study of the Quran, and on that basis, I have come to the conclusion that this is a book from God. The Quran is clear, complete, and fully detailed. The Quran is a message and warning to all mankind from the one Almighty God. It warns those who have set up false gods that they will continue to be subjected to degradation and humiliation in this life and the next unless they repent and turn to the one true God. God calls us to serve Him by doing good deeds. God condemns religions and sects. He accuses priests, ulemas, and leaders of religion of abandoning His scriptures and twisting His words in order to divert men from His straight path. God calls all believing men to unite in the tremendous task of serving Him alone. The religion of Islam claims to have a monopoly on the Quran, yet this very book condemns this religion. It condemns their idolatrous rituals and criticizes their blind following of the practices of their ancestors. Their ritual prayer and their worship of a stone idol called the Kaaba in Mecca are nowhere in the Quran. The Quran condemns the veneration of all animate and inanimate objects. These are all false idols having no power to cause harm or confer benefit to anyone. The Quran is clear that it alone is the source of guidance for a believer. The religion of Islam takes man made books called the Hadith, which is a compilation of sayings attributed to Prophet Muhammad, in addition to the Quran as a source of guidance. God has sent down a complete, clear, and fully detailed book, that is the Quran, and all believers are commanded to hold fast to it. Sadly, the religion of Islam has abandoned this book and treats it as a relic. As a result, God has abandoned them, and they are subjected to humiliation and degradation. In this work, I have brought forth arguments from the Quran alone, arguments which, to my mind, constitute sufficient proof for the existence of an Almighty Creator. I have marshaled verses from the Quran addressing diverse topics such as the resurrection, setting up false gods alongside the one true God, invented religions, and God's warnings. I have also focused extensively on the false rituals practiced by adherents of the religion of Islam and the rampant idolatry that has infested it. Finally, I have shown, using the Quran alone, how tenuous the connection is between core concepts in the Quran and the religion of Islam. It is my sacred duty as a believer to call people to God, and it is in discharging this duty that I have written this book. It is my hope that this work will provide an impetus to the sincere inquirer to carefully study the Quran, and if God wills, attain an unshakable faith in the one true God and endeavor to serve Him alone. Chapter 1. God's Proofs. God calls men to use their intellect, the greatest gift given to him man from God, and observe the world around them. The Quran exhorts men to observe, reflect, and meditate on the wonders of God which they pass by at every waking moment of their lives. God is knowable to man only by his intellect. The proofs all around testify to the one Creator, the one true God, who is the architect of all things. The precision and harmony with which everything functions is evidence of a single mind, an omnipotent God. Means of insight have come to you from your Lord, and whoso sees, it is for his soul, and whoso is blind, it is against it, and I am not a custodian over you. Chapter 6, verse 104. Chapter 2. God's proofs in the heavens. The Quran cites the creation of the heavens and the earth as evidence of the power and skill of its creator. The alternation of night and day, and the ceaseless motion of the sun and the moon are pointed out by God as proofs of his might and omnipotence. In the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the alternation of night and day, are proofs for those possessed of insight. Chapter 3, verse 190. And he it is who made for you the stars, that you might be rightly guided thereby in the darkness of the land and the sea. We have set out and detailed the proofs for people who know. The originator of the heavens and the earth. He has made for you among yourselves pairs, and among the cattle pairs. He multiplies you thereby. There is nothing like him. And he is the hearer, the seeing. Chapter 42, verse 11. And every sort of thing we created has two kinds, that you might take heed. Chapter 51, verse 49. Chapter 3. God's proofs in man. Man is proof of the power of the Almighty God. Let us trace the genesis of our creation. It is the simple truth that God created us from clay, which is a mixture of dust and water. All the food we eat ultimately springs forth from this clay. This food is then broken down and used by our bodies for energy. Our bodies also use the minerals in this food for various processes, including the creation of sperm. This sperm then combines with the female egg to begin the process of creation, which the Qur'an describes in detail. O mankind, should you be in doubt concerning the resurrection, we created you from dust, then from a drop of fluid, then from a clinging thing, then from a fleshy lump, formed and unformed, that we might make plain to you. And we cause to rest what we will in the wombs to a named term. Then brought we you forth as a child, then that you reach your maturity. And among you is he who is taken, and among you is he who is returned to a feeble age, so that he knows not, after knowledge, anything. And thou seest the earth lifeless. Then when we send down upon it the water, it stirs and gives increase, and puts forth every sort of delightful kind. Chapter 22, verse 5. And God brought you forth from the wombs of your mothers, not knowing anything, and made for you hearing and sight and intellect, that you might be grateful. Chapter 16, verse 78. God is he who creates you weak, then makes he after weakness strength, then after strength makes he weakness and white hair. He creates what he wills, and he is the knowing, the mighty. Chapter 30, verse 54. Chapter 4. Life after death proofs. God requires us to believe in a life after death. The majority of men claim that they believe in a life after death, but their actions state otherwise. It is one thing to claim to believe in a thing, and an entirely different matter to actually believe in it. God brings our attention to the cycle of creation and destruction in vegetation. He asks us to observe how he sends the fertilizing wind and rain to give life to the dead earth. He points out how vegetation revives and springs forth. The land is decked in beauty and greenery for a time. Eventually, all vegetation dies and becomes scattered dust. The cycle then repeats. Such is the life of this world. And this is a lesson for all men of insight. And man says, when I am dead, will I be brought forth alive? Does not man remember that we created him before he was anything? Chapter 19, verses 66 and 67. And he presents to us an example, and forgets his creation, saying, who will give life to these bones when they are rotted away? Say thou, he will give them life who brought them into being the first time, and he knows all creation. Chapter 36, verses 78 and 79. Have they not considered that God who created the heavens and the earth, and has not been wearied by their creation, is able to give life to the dead? Verily, God is powerful over all things. Chapter 46, verse 33. Thinks man that we will not assemble his bones? Verily, we are able to fashion his fingertips. The truth is, man intends to be unrestrained ahead of him. Chapter 75, verses 3 to 5. Chapter 5. Proofs of the Qur'an. The Qur'an's message has been guarded from corruption because God has taken it upon himself to protect it. We send down the remembrance, and we are its custodians. Chapter 15, verse 9. We can verify the truth of this statement by the fact that the Qur'an was in the custody of the religion of Islam for centuries, yet they were unable to modify it to accommodate the idolatrous practices. I am referring to the veneration and circling of a stone idol in Mecca called the Kaaba. Such was the divine protection of this message that they had to invent an entirely separate literature called the Hadith, which they claimed to be the words and actions of the last messenger Muhammad, to justify their false practices. The fundamental requirement to enter the religion of Islam, the Shahada, also known as the testification of faith, is found nowhere in the Quran. Many a religious scholar of the religion of Islam would have loved to add this requirement and statement to the Quran to justify their invented religion, but they were unable to do so. The truth is, it is a glorious recitation on a protected tablet, chapter 85, verses 21 and 22. Proofs of the Quran's divine origin. Will they not consider the Quran with care? And had it been from other than God, they would have found therein much contradiction. Chapter 4, verse 82. And they measure not God with the measure due him. When they say, God has not sent down upon a mortal anything, say thou, who sent down the law which Musa brought as a light and guidance for men? You make it parchments which you show, and you hide much, and you were taught what you knew not, you or your fathers. Say thou, God. Then leave thou them playing in their jests. Chapter 6, verse 91. Or if they say, He has invented it, the truth is they do not believe. And let them produce a narrative the like thereof if they be truthful. Chapter 52, verse 33 and 34. Chapter 6, Divinity of Jesus. Christians claim that a man called Jesus is the Son of God. Indeed, it is an extraordinary thing to say that God begot a son. The Quran has many arguments as to the impossibility of Jesus, or anyone else for that matter, being the Son of God. It is impossible for God to beget a son, since God has no companion. If the response is that God can do anything he wills, then God most certainly can. However, it is not fitting for him to take sons or daughters. He has no need. He is perfect in all of his attributes. They have denied who say God is the anointed one, son of Maryam. Say thou, who has power over God if he should wish to destroy the anointed one, son of Maryam, and his mother, and everyone on the earth altogether? And to God belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and what is between them. He creates what he wills, and God is powerful over all things. Chapter 5, verse 17. The originator of the heavens and the earth, how can there be for him a son, when there has not been for him a consort? And he has created all things, and he knows all things. Chapter 6, verse 101. God takes not any son, and there is not with him any God. Then would each God have taken what he created, and some of them would have overcome others. Glory be unto God above what they describe. Chapter 23, verse 91. Chapter 7, Partners with God. The religion of Islam claims to be monotheistic. They claim the Quran to be their primary source of guidance, but they do not study it carefully. The Quran is relegated to a ceremonial role. Adherents of the religion of Islam recite the Quran without understanding it during ritual prayers, and they believe that they earn good deeds for doing so. Accumulation of these good deeds is the main concern of the religion of Islam. Their belief is that if they accumulate sufficient rewards by performing empty rituals, then they will enter paradise. The Quran already anticipates this state of affairs. And the messenger will say, O my Lord, my people took this Quran as a thing abandoned. Chapter 25, verse 30. Adherents of the religion of Islam refer to Hadith for details on all aspects of their religion. They follow the decisions of their respective leaders of religion, that is, Imams, Ulemas, and Muftis, on religious matters. Despite clear Quranic directives to take the Quran alone as a source of guidance, they take these idols as a source of guidance. Hast thou not considered those who claim to believe in what is sent down to thee, and what was sent down before thee, desiring to go for judgment to idols when they have been ordered to reject it? And the shaitan desires to lead them far astray. Chapter 4, verse 60. Adherents of the Islamic religion revere a stone idol called the Kaaba. They circle it 7 times and compete to kiss an enclase black stone called the Hajar Aswad during their invented pilgrimage. They prostrate themselves in the direction of the Kaaba during ritual prayer, claiming that they are actually worshipping God. Where in the Quran does God command people to prostrate themselves in the direction of a stone idol in order to worship Him? On the contrary, God is everywhere. And to God belong the east and the west. Whithersoever you turn, there is the countenance of God. God encompasses, knows. Chapter 2, verse 115. The crux of my argument is that adherents of the Islamic religion claim that the Quran and Hadith are the foundation of their religion. They have set up books created by men, Hadith and other sources, as partners with the books sent down by God. Only a hypocrite would claim that monotheism is to say God is one and serve Him alone, but to act in full contradiction to this statement. These people think they are deceiving God, but in truth they are only deceiving themselves. And the day we gather them all together, then will we say to those who ascribe a partnership, where are your partners that you claimed? Then will their means of denial be only that they will say, by God, our Lord, we were not idolaters. See thou how they will lie against themselves, when straight from them will be what they invented. Chapter 6, verses 22 to 24. Atheism. Atheists claim that they do not believe in a God. They live their life in accordance with their passions, whims, and vain desires. Their desires are then their gods. Hast thou then considered him who takes as his God his vain desire, and God sent him astray according to knowledge, and sealed his hearing and his heart, and set over his sight a covering? Then who will guide him after God? Will you then not take heed? Chapter 45, verse 23. Setting up partners with God. God is clear that those who set up partners with him are destined for hell. Setting up idols is the worst kind of rebelliousness. To attribute the favors of God to another entity is showing the utmost ungratefulness to God. God reminds us that He alone has power and control over us. And how could I fear that to which you ascribe a partnership, when you fear not that you ascribe a partnership with God to that for which He has not sent down upon you a warrant? Then which of the two factions has more right to security, if you know? Those who heed warning and have not clothed their faith in injustice, they have security, and they are rightly guided. And that is our argument. We gave it to Ibrahim against his people. We raise in degree whom we will. Thy Lord is wise, knowing. Chapter 6, verses 81 to 83. Ascribe they a partnership to what creates not anything, but they are created, and they will not be able to help them, nor do they help themselves. Chapter 7, verse 191 and 192. And they serve besides God what neither harms them nor benefits them. And they say, these are our intercessors with God. Say thou, would you inform God of what he knows not in the heavens or in the earth? Glory be unto him, and exalted is he above that to which they ascribe a partnership. Chapter 10, verse 18. And when affliction touches man, he calls to us. Then when we confirm upon him grace from us, he says, it has but been given me according to knowledge. The truth is, it is a means of denial, but most of them know not. Chapter 39, verse 49. Chapter 8. The Folly of Religion. Since time immemorial, mankind has been subjugated by two institutions, religion and state. Religion derives its power from the fear of God, and state derives its power from the fear of men. The men who control and direct these institutions are schemers. They scheme to part us from God and our God given reason. God is the merciful. He has sent down messengers with His guidance throughout the ages in order to guide men to the path of reason. Most of these messengers failed in their mission to make people see the futility of serving their false idols. People continued in their blind obedience to them and were destroyed by God as a consequence. The last messenger and prophet, Muhammad, was successful in getting men to cast the yokes of tyranny and oppression from their necks. The stranglehold of religion and state was weakened for a while. The schemers, however, would not let this state of felicity last for long. They worked diligently and intelligently to extinguish the guidance sent down by God. As time went on, this great book, the Qur'an, became a relic. People went back to serving their idols in the form of kings, egos, and religious scholars. This is the condition which we find mankind today. We are a rabid mob serving a multitude of idols. We have been led away from the service of God into idolatry. Chief among these idols is our ego, heads of states, celebrities, economists, scientists, doctors, and religious scholars. We are subjected to poverty, humiliation, and pain. Our families and communities have been torn asunder. We have destroyed our environment. Men work harder for and harder for less and less. Our civilization is in a state of decay. There is a way out of this hell we find ourselves in. That way is to believe in God and the last day, and to do good works and turn to God in repentance. Because God does not change the grace He bestows upon a people until they change what is in their souls, and because God is hearing, knowing. Chapter 8, verse 53. No requirement to follow religion. I define religion as a set of beliefs, dogmas, and rituals. Religions throughout the ages have always been about control and money. Certain structures are common to all religions. They require belief in something extraordinary. This may be one God, monotheism, many gods, polytheism, or no God at all, atheism. They all have a religious scholarly class whose job is to explain complicated laws and preside over rituals. These religious scholars are not to be questioned, and we must accept their judgment as the final word. They claim to have access to specialized knowledge to which the masses are not out privy. Each religion has standardized rituals unique to it, which all adherents must perform in order to please their respective god or gods. A tit or religious tax is usually imposed on all followers of a religion. This money is used in the maintenance of religious institutions, payment of the religious class, and for furthering propaganda. This is all quite clear to any thinking man. However, what will come as a surprise to you is that God is not interested in religions or rituals. We are under no obligation to join a religion or to start a new religion. The flag you wear or the rituals you perform are of no interest to God. The one true God calls us to believe in Him, the last day, and to do good works. And they say, none enters the garden save such as hold to Judaism or Nazarenes. Those are their vain desires. Say thou, bring your evidence if you be truthful. Verily, whoso submits his countenance to God, and is a doer of good, for him is his reward with his Lord, and they need not fear, nor will they regret. Chapter 2, verse 112. The Quran warns mankind about splitting into religions, factions, and sects. Those who divide their doctrine in our sects, thou art not of them in anything. Their affair is but with God. Then will He inform them of what they did. Chapter 6, verse 159. God's straight path. The Quran has simple and clear rules that we are to adhere to. These rules are reasonable, and their application leads to inner fulfillment and a just society. In contrast, empty rituals inherent in all religions provide no value to mankind. The ruling elite implemented these rituals to keep people busy worshiping God in churches and mosques. Naturally, if men were to follow God's call, they would stand up against oppression and injustice. This would be a threat to the oppressors of men. The straight path of God is simple. All men are exhorted to follow this straight path if they want to attain salvation. This path is outlined in the Quran. Say thou, come, I will recite to you what your Lord has made unlawful for you, that you ascribe a partnership with him to anything, while towards parents good conduct, and kill not your children out of poverty. We will provide for you and for them. And approach not sexual immoralities, whether open or concealed. And kill not the soul which God has made unlawful, save aright, that he enjoined upon you, that you might use reason. And approach not the property of the fatherless, save with what is better, until he reach his maturity, and fulfill the measure and the balance with equity. We task not any soul save to its capacity. And when you speak, be just, though he be a relative, and the pledge of God fulfill, that he commanded you, that you might take heed. And this is my straight path, so follow it, and follow not other ways, for then will you be parted from his way, that he commanded you, that you might be in prudent fear. Chapter 6, verses 151 through 153. The Quran warns leaders of religion. Every religion has a religious class who claims to be mouthpieces for God. They dress up in ridiculous clothes and finery. They alter their appearance to appear as holy men. The masses are deceived by this outward show of pomp and holiness. Men are impressed by appearances and outward show. For millennia, intelligent men have known that the ignorant crowd is not swayed by reason and logic. Far more important is the display of power and appearance. O you who heed warning, many among the rabbis and the religious scholars consume the wealth of men in vanity and forsake the path of God. And those who amass gold and silver and spend it not for the cause of God, give thou them tidings of a painful punishment. Chapter 9, verse 34. Religious scholars use confusing jargon when presiding over rituals. A priest uses bits of Latin during holy service. An imam uses Arabic catchphrases in his sermon to an English audience. Why do they not speak plainly? It is because they are impressing upon the listeners that they have special knowledge and understand the Word of God. They seek mischievously to impress upon men that God speaks in an alien language full of riddles, and his commands can only be deciphered by these learned men. And thus we appoint for every prophet an enemy, shaitans of men and jinn, instructing one another in the decoration of speech by deception. And had thy Lord willed, they would not do it. So leave thou them and what they fabricate. And that the hearts of those who believe not in the hereafter might incline thereto, and be pleased therewith, and that they might gain what they will gain. Is it other than God I should seek as a judge? And he it is who sent down to you the law set out and detailed. And those whom we gave the law know that it is sent down from thy Lord aright. So be thou not of those who doubt. Chapter 6, verses 112 to 114. Submission to God alone. Men have been fooled into thinking that in order for them to reach a happy state in this life and the next, they must follow religion. The Islamic religion claims that by reciting a testification of faith, a person becomes a Muslim. He then has to perform certain rituals and follow regulations dictated by the religion of Islam in order to enter paradise. This is similar to what the Jews and Christians claim. Everyone is told that their specific group is the chosen one. Each group condemns others to hell. The Quran sets out the criteria for salvation: belief in God and the last day, and to do good works. The Quran condemns religions plainly. O you messengers, eat of the good things and work righteousness. I know what you do. And this your community is one community, and I am your Lord, and be in prudent fear of me. But they divided their command among them into written records, each party exulting at what it has. Chapter 23, verses 51 to 53. Chapter 9, the Religion of Islam. Adherents of the Islamic religion claim that God requires us to convert to a religion called Islam. According to the Quran, Islam means submission to God. It is not the name of any specific religion. All messengers and prophets of God were Muslims because they submitted to God alone. Nowhere in the Quran does God require a Muslim to enter a religion, grow a beard, wear an Arab costume, start using Arabic catchphrases, or go to a mosque to pray. These are all false inventions. To justify these invented practices, the Islamic religion turns to secondary sources. Their argument is that since the details of the invented rituals are not in the Quran, Hadith and Sunnah are needed to explain how to implement the practices of their religion. They are correct that the details of the invented rituals are not in the Quran, because the Quran does not provide a blueprint for a religion full of rituals, dogmas, and idolatry. It only calls men to believe in God, the last day, and to do good deeds. The Quran is clear, complete, and fully detailed. The Quran claims repeatedly that it is clear, complete, and fully detailed. We are to take this claim seriously and take the Quran as our only source of guidance. And perfected are the words of thy Lord in truth and justice. There is none to change his words, and he is the hearing, the knowing. Chapter 6, verse 115. And we have brought them a decree, which we have set out and detailed according to knowledge, as guidance and mercy for people who believe. Chapter 7, verse 52. This is a clear communication to mankind, and that they be warned thereby, and that they might know that He is but one God, and those possessed of insight might take heed. We require that thou bear witness to it. Chapter 14, verse 52. And we have expounded for men in this Quran every sort of example, but man is, more than anything, contentious. Chapter 18, verse 54. The five pillars of Islam. There are five fundamental articles of faith according to the religion of Islam. An adherent of this religion must implement these pillars in his daily life to be considered a practicing Muslim. Number 1, Shahada, testification of faith. Number 2, Salat, ritual prayer. Number 3, Psalm, fasting during a special month called Ramadan. Number 4, Zakat, paying a 2.5% tax on your savings yearly. Number 5, Hajj, pilgrimage to the Kaaba in Mecca. If we look in the Quran to understand what these pillars are and how to implement them, we find that there is no mention in the Quran of any pillars relating to faith. This is because the Quran is concerned with guiding men to a monotheistic way of life and not with the creation of religion. The Quran is concerned with personal initiative and responsibility. Everyone is called to believe in one God and the last day and to do good deeds. A religion is a man made construct like any other social institution. It is true that institutions are useful for furthering the potential of men. However, more often than not, institutions are used in furthering the interests of a few powerful men. This is what the religion of Islam is. Adherents of the religion of Islam have strayed far away from the book they claim as the divine source of their religion. Chapter 10, Hadith and Sunnah. The religion of Islam is predicated on three things: the Quran, Hadith, and Sunnah. The Hadith are a collection of alleged sayings attributed to Prophet Muhammad. These sayings were compiled in the form of books by Persians centuries after Prophet Muhammad's death. The Sunnah is a broad framework that encompasses rituals allegedly practiced by Prophet Muhammad, passed down by the consensus of earlier generations. Sometimes, Hadith and Sunnah are used interchangeably. We have already established that the Quran is sufficient for our guidance. However, as I mentioned earlier, the Quran does not contain details for rituals, which are the bread and butter of the Islamic religion. These secondary sources were used by the elite to corrupt the doctrine of God. The religion of Islam uses these man made books of hearsay as a foundation for cultic practices which were never authorized by God. Let me be clear: Prophet Muhammad received the Quran from God and nothing else. He was ordered to follow the Quran and to use the Quran to warn people. And when our clear proofs are recited to them, those who look not to the meeting with us say, "Bring thou a recitation other than this, or change thou it." Say thou, "It is not for me to change it of my own accord. I follow only what I am instructed. I fear if I should disobey my Lord the punishment of a tremendous day." Chapter 10, verse 15. A successive revelation from the Lord of all mankind. And had he ascribed some sayings to us, we would have taken him with our right hand, then would we have cut from him the aorta, and not one among you could have prevented it. And it is a reminder to those of prudent fear. Chapter 69, verses 43 to 48. There are numerous problems with Hadith and Sunnah. If we take man made books in addition to the Quran, we are setting up a partnership with God's book. This is not a trivial matter. God has sent down a complete and perfect guidance, but men are not satisfied with the simple rules laid out in it. They have set up complicated rules and regulations based on Hadith and Sunnah that are in addition to and in contradiction to the Quran. This is a sin in the sight of God. Monotheism is not simply saying has no partners. It is also rejecting all manner of teachings and practices that were never authorized by God. Say thou, have you considered what God has sent down for you of provision, and you made thereof lawful and unlawful? Say thou, did God give you leave, or is it about God that you invent? And what will those who invent lies about God think on the day of resurrection? God is bountiful towards men, but most of them are not grateful. Chapter 10, verses 59 and 60. Those who wish to divert men from the straight path of God have a certain mode of operation. They dress up in holy cloth and twist the meanings of words in God given scriptures to their own purposes. The corruption of the words Hadith and Sunnah is a prime example of this tactic. The Quran uses these words many times. Let us look in it to see how they are used. The word Hadith simply means narration. In the Quran, it never refers to a collection of sayings attributed to Prophet Muhammad, written down centuries after his death. This is a fact. God sent down the best narration, a decree of paired comparisons whereat shiver the skins of those who fear their Lord. Then their skins and their hearts softened to the remembrance of God. That is the guidance of God, wherewith he guides whom he wills, and whom God sends astray, for him there is no guide. Chapter 39, verse 23. Those are the proofs of God. We recite them to thee aright. Then in what narration after God and his proofs will they believe? Chapter 45, verse 6. Is this the narration you take lightly, and make rejection thereof your livelihood? Chapter 56, verses 81 82. Then in what narration after it will they believe? Chapter 77, verse 50. Similarly, the word sunnah simply means practice or precedent. In the Quran, it is never referred to as the practice of Prophet Muhammad. But if they return, the practice of the former peoples has gone before. Chapter 8, verse 38. They believe not in it, and the practice of the former peoples has come and gone. Chapter 15, verse 13. The practice of God among those who came and went before has not changed, and thou wilt not find for the practice of God any replacement. Chapter 33, verse 62. The great tragedy that has unfolded before us is that those who claim to be Muslims have surrendered the Book of God to deceivers. These deceivers have wasted no time in creating an entire false religion and in becoming its custodians. They have introduced complicated rules and rituals, guaranteeing their livelihoods as interpreters of these regulations. Men are intellectually lazy and are happy being told what to do. They are suffering the consequences of their actions. God has sent down a clear book which we are to apply in our lives. We cannot hope to rid ourselves of our merciless masters if we do not use our own intelligence. Now is the time to reject these fabrications and turn to the Book of God alone. Chapter 11. Corruption of Salat. The command to establish Salat occurs many times in the Quran. The Islamic religion takes Salat to mean a highly specialized ritual performed at specific times in a day. This Salat is performed by facing the direction of the Kaaba idol in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. Let us see how the Quran uses Salat, translated as duty by Brother Garens. Moses was commanded to establish Salat in his first meeting with God. I am God, there is no God save I, so serve thou me, and uphold thou the duty for my remembrance. Chapter 20, verse 14. Go thou and thy brother with my proofs, and flag not in my remembrance. Chapter 20, verse 42. The Quran details Moses' first encounter with God from many different perspectives, and nowhere are the details of a supposed ritual present. Whatever Salat was, it was assumed that Moses knew how to do it. This is evidence that Salat cannot mean a ritual prayer as practiced by the adherents of the Islamic religion. Salat in this instance clearly means to remember God. Salat is a duty to be performed by a believer all throughout his life. This duty includes serving God, seeking help from God, glorifying God, remembering God, reading the Quran, warning others, and feeding the needy. In short, Salat for the believers means the duty to implement the commandments of God. To assign Salat a specific meaning of ritual prayer is twisting its meaning. Suppose, for instance, if Hindus started calling their devotions to their deity Salat, would that be acceptable? We need to look in the Quran for the meaning of a word. The primary salat of the believers is to serve and seek assistance from God alone. I am thankful to Brother Garens for this insight. I present to you a short chapter of the Quran to further illustrate salat. Hast thou considered him who repudiates the doctrine, that it is he who repels the fatherless, and encourages not the feeding of the needy? Then woe to the performers of duty, those who are heedless of their duty, those who make show and refuse small things. Chapter 107. If read with a closed mind and years of Islamic brainwashing, it appears that God is condemning someone who denies the religion of Islam. What follow are the characteristics of this denier? He repels the orphan and the needy. He performs a ritual prayer but is heedless of it, and he pretends to be generous but refuses small favors. The narrative seems disjointed and confused. It shifts from universal good deeds, feeding the poor, taking care of orphans, to the performance of a specialized ritual prayer for the sake of showing off. If, however, we read the chapter with an open mind and without prejudice, we see something entirely different. When we replace the word salat with its true translation of duty, we realize that this chapter is criticizing the heads of state and men of means. It is condemning those men who do not believe in God and the last day. They pretend to do good by setting up charitable foundations, the real purpose of which is to avoid taxes, but are busy in exploiting the masses while clothing themselves in righteousness. They are heedless of their duty to help the unfortunate and the needy. I must emphasize that the elite are the ones responsible for obfuscating the message of the Quran. They were rightly afraid that their tactics were being exposed by this divine scripture. Chapter 12, Corruption of Zakat. The Quran envisions a just society comprising individuals who compete with each other in doing good deeds and in taking care of the less fortunate among them. It never envisions a totalitarian state where people are compelled to do the state's bidding. Oppressive and tyrannical structures are all built on the premise that a system is needed to subjugate men in order to improve the condition of society. No compulsion is there in doctrine. Sound judgment is clear from error, and whoso denies idols and believes in God, he has grasped a firm handhold which has no break, and God is hearing, knowing. Chapter 2, verse 256. In certain Islamic countries, a zakat tax of 2.5% is levied on individuals. This percentage amount is not found in the Quran. The word zakat does not mean tax or charity. It means purity and is used consistently to mean that in the Quran. A tax of any kind levied on an individual is repugnant to the letter and spirit of the Quran. This corruption is part of a broader agenda to create a religion with rules and regulations which can then be enforced on the masses. It is true that if we give money to feed the poor, we are purifying ourselves. It is also true that if we resist our base desires, we are purifying ourselves. There are many verses where salat and zakat are mentioned together. We are to hold to our duties, which in turn purify us. And when we took an agreement of the children of Israel, serve not save God, and towards parents good conduct, and towards kin, and the fatherless, and the poor, and speak kindly to mankind, and uphold the duty, and give the purity. Then you turned away save a few among you, and you were disinclined. Chapter 2, verse 83. Our Lord, raised thou up among them a messenger from them, reading to them thy proofs, and teaching them the law and wisdom, and increasing them in purity. Thou art the mighty, the wise. Chapter 2, verse 129. O Yahya, hold thou fast to the law, and we gave him judgment when a child, and tenderness from ourselves, and purity, and he was in prudent fear. Chapter 19, verses 12 and 13. He it is who raised up among the unschooled a messenger from among them, reciting to them his proofs, and increasing them in purity, and teaching them the law and wisdom, though they were before in obvious error. Chapter 62, verse 2. Chapter 13, Corruption of Sujud. We will now look at the word sujud and identify its true meaning. Adherents of the religion of Islam claim that the word sujud means to put your forehead on the ground facing the Kaaba during a ritual prayer. Such a high degree of specificity cannot be sustained across the whole text of the Quran. When pressed, translators switch from this specific ritualistic action to a general meaning. They are oblivious to the real meaning of sujud, which simply means submission. Have they not considered what God has created of a thing, turning its shadow right and left in submission to God? And they are abased. And to God submits what is in the heavens and what is in the earth among creatures, and the angels, and they are not proud. Chapter 16, verse 48 and 49. We see clearly in these verses that sujud is the opposite of being proud. Say thou, believe in it or believe not, you neither benefit nor harm God thereby. Those who were given knowledge before it, when it is read to them, they fall down most earnestly in submission. Chapter 17, verse 107. Is God implying that those to whom the Quran is read out fall down in prostration facing the direction of a stone idol in Makkah? Chapter 14, Corruption of Rukuh. The concept of rukuh as promulgated by the religion of Islam is to bow during the ritual prayer called salaat. We have already established that salaat does not mean a ritual prayer. An attentive and sincere study of all verses in which the word ruku occurs leads us to conclude that it means to be humble or lowly. That is the only meaning that fits in all verses in the Quran. Muhammad is the messenger of God, and those with him are hard against the atheists, merciful among themselves. Thou seest them lowly in submission, seeking favor and pleasure from God. Their mark on their faces in the wake of the submission. That is their example in the Torah. And their example in the Gospel is like a seed that put forth its shoot and became stout, and took its place upon its stem, impressing the sowers, that he might enrage the atheists by them. God has promised those who heed warning and do deeds of righteousness among them forgiveness and a tremendous reward. Chapter 48, verse 29. And when it is said to them, Be lowly, they are not lowly. Chapter 77, verse 48. Chapter 15, Life of this World. What is the life of this world? A fleeting pleasure punctuated with a lot of pain. We are born, we live, and we die. Life is a constant struggle, full of worries and difficulties. In today's world, we have modern conveniences that people of old could only have dreamed of, yet we are not content. People use all sorts of distractions to lessen the hardships of life. Some people use mass entertainment, some use drugs, while others try to lose themselves in hedonism. However we may choose to live our lives, we cannot escape the inevitable fact that we are all going to die. All things are born, mature, and die. God gives us an example of the life of this world. The example of the life of this world is but like the water we send down from the sky and mingle with the plants of the earth of which men and cattle eat. When the earth has taken her decoration and is made fair, and its people think they have mastery over it, there comes our command by night or by day, and we make it reaped as if it had not flourished the day before. Thus do we set out and detail the proofs for people who reflect. Chapter 10, verse 24. Know that the life of this world is but play and diversion and adornment and mutual boasting among you and competition for increase in wealth and children. Like the example of a rain, it impresses the atheist with its growth, then it withers and thou seest turn to yellow, then it becomes chaff. And in the hereafter is severe punishment and forgiveness and good pleasure from God, and the life of this world is only the enjoyment of deception. Chapter 57, verse 20. Chapter 16. What is our purpose? Having established that there is a God who created us, the natural question is, to what purpose? This age old question has perplexed thinkers. Most people assume that our purpose in life is to improve our lot. Men toil all their lives to accumulate riches, prestige, and status. We are fooled into thinking that we must use all our resources to better our lives and to enjoy trivial pursuits that bring us contentment and pleasure. Yet, these things do not bring us the bliss we so ardently desire. The Quran explains to us our true purpose in this life. And I created the jinn and men only that they might serve me. Chapter 51, verse 56. There is no call to do complicated rituals and prescribed manner to serve God. There is only the call to do good deeds. These deeds are enumerated many times in the Quran. Feeding the poor, taking care of one's parents, and speaking the truth are good deeds. Similarly, children are taught from an early age the importance of compassion, patience, and justice. This is what God calls us towards. If everyone did this, we would not be living in the cruel and heartless world of today. The ultimate potential of man is unlocked when he uses the gift of intellect given to him by God. The realization of this potential is the highest endeavor of which we are capable. He it is who created you from dust, then from a drop of fluid, then from a clinging thing. Then he brings you forth as a child, then that you reach your maturity, then that you become old. And among you is he who is caused to die before, and that you reach a named term, and that you might use reason. Chapter 40, verse 67. Chapter 17, Ancient Civilizations. How many great civilizations have gone before us? The Egyptian Empire, the Sassanid Empire, the Roman Empire, despite all their achievements and glory, decayed to nothing. In that is a lesson for all of us. The destruction of civilizations happens as a punishment from God. God is not arbitrary. Once a civilization reaches the pinnacle of decadence and immorality, it is destroyed. And there is no city save we will destroy it before the day of resurrection, or punish it with severe punishment. That is in the law inscribed, chapter 17, verse 58. And how many generations destroyed we before them? Perceivest thou any of them, or hearest from them a sound? Chapter 19, verse 98. Have we not destroyed the former peoples, then caused to follow those who came later? Chapter 17, 7, verses 16 and 17. Chapter 18. Why do people not believe? A thinking man, after seeing all these proofs, would either be convinced or remain unconvinced. It is not within my power to guide you. It is not within your power to guide yourself. Messengers were unable to guide the communities that they were sent to. It is only God who guides. The Qur'an speaks of this issue at length. God chooses from his servants and guides whom he wills. Of course, it is our duty as believers to call men towards God, but we do not have the authority to force anyone to believe. This in itself is one of the most potent proofs of faith. We all are living in the same world, yet some deny and others believe. God does not guide the wantonly perfidious and arrogant people. Prophet Muhammad was given the Quran, and the proofs in it are sufficient for those whom God guides. The state of people is such that they naturally look to self professed holy men and spiritual guides, thinking that through them they will be guided. This is the wrong approach because God alone can guide us. It is true that God sent messengers and prophets to their respective communities, yet they could only warn and call men to God. Muhammad was the last prophet. Today we have demagogues. It would be a mistake to follow these false preachers, regardless of how impressive their appearance and eloquence may be. We must use our intellect, the greatest gift from God, to find God. Our ears can hear, but there are animals that can hear better than us. Our eyes can see, but there are animals that can see better than us. Our mind can reason, but there is no animal that can reason better than us. And we have sown for hell many among men, the jinn, and mankind. They have hearts wherewith they understand not, and they have eyes wherewith they see not, and they have ears wherewith they hear not. These are like the cattle, nay, they are further astray. These are the heedless. Chapter 7, verse 179. And were we to send down to them the angels and the dead to speak to them, and we to gather everything unto them face to face, they would not believe, save if God should will, but most of them are ignorant. Chapter 6, verse 111. And recite thou unto them the report of him to whom we gave our proofs, but he detached himself from them. So the Shaitan followed him, and he was among the misguided. And had we willed, we would have raised him by them, but he clung to the earth and followed his vain desire. His example is like the example of a dog. If thou win him over, he pants, or if thou leave him, he pants. That is the example of the people who repudiate our proofs, but narrate thou to them the narratives, that they might reflect. Chapter 7, verse 175 and 176. And thus we sent not before thee into a city any warner, save as opulent one said, we found our fathers in the community, and we are guided following hard upon them. He said, even though I bring you better guidance than that upon which you found your fathers, they said, we are deniers of that wherewith you have been sent. So we took retribution from them. Then see thou how was the final outcome of the repudiators. Chapter 43, verses 23 to 25. Chapter 19, Glory of God. The true glory and majesty of God is beyond our comprehension. It is through His last revelation and His works around us that we get some idea of the greatness of God. Man looks for firm ground on which to anchor himself. The only constant in this world is change. We all want to live a happy life. The Quran shows us the way. All that is needed is that we hold fast to the book of God that He has sent down. He is our anchor in this life and the next. God is our only ally and protector. The things we value in this life the most, such as wealth, children, and status, they will all pass away. Only God will remain. And call thou not to another God with God. There is no God save He. Everything will perish save His countenance. Judgment is His, and to Him will you be returned. chapter 28, verse 88. Endeavoring for the acceptance of God is the noblest of pursuits. Let us contemplate the majesty of God. All praise belongs to the Almighty who is not begotten nor has begotten. He does not have any partners in his dominion. The command is his. When he wills a thing to be, then it is. God always achieves his command. He knows everything while we can only know of him what he wills. Everything in the heavens and the earth obeys him and fears him. The thunder glorifies him, as do the angels. The heavens are almost rent asunder from fear of him. We have besides him no protector or ally. He is perfect in all his attributes. He is the omnipotent and the merciful. He bestows his bounty on whom he wills. He leads astray and guides whom he wills. He is the architect of all things. He has created everything in balance and harmony. There is nothing like him. He is the exalter and the abaser. He is the severe in punishment. Judgment is his. He does what he wills. He sustains all creation. He knows all things. In truth, he is the exalted king, and all glory is for him alone. He is the best of judges and the mightiest of allies. God, there is no God save he, the living, the eternal. Neither slumber nor sleep overtake him. Unto him belongs what is in the heavens and what is in the earth. Who can intercede with him save by his leave? He knows what is at their time and what following them, and they encompass nothing of his knowledge save what he wills. His throne overspreads the heavens and the earth, and the sustaining thereof wearies him not, and he is the exalted, the tremendous. Chapter 2, verse 255. Vision comprehends him not, but he comprehends vision. He is the subtle, the aware. Chapter 6, verse 103. And when Musa came to her appointed time, and his Lord spoke to him, he said, My Lord, show thou me that I might look upon thee. Said he, Thou wilt not see me, but look thou upon the mountain. If it should remain in its place, then wilt thou see me. And when his Lord was revealed upon the mountain, he made it level, and Musa fell down thunderstruck. Then when he recovered, he said, Glory be unto thee. I turn to thee repentant, and I am the first of the believers. Chapter 7, verse 143. And to God submits whoso is in the heavens and the earth, willingly or unwillingly, as do their shadows in the morning and the evening. Chapter 13, verse 15. He is not questioned about what he does, but they will be questioned. Chapter 21, verse 23. The command is but his. When he intends a thing, he says to it, Be thou, and it is. Chapter 36, verse 82. And they measured God not with the measure due him, and the earth is altogether in his grip on the day of resurrection, and the heavens will be rolled up in his right hand. Glory be unto him, and exalted is he above that to which they ascribe a partnership. Chapter 39, verse 67. And hide you your opinions or declare it publicly. He knows what is in the breasts. Could he not know, he who created? And he is the subtle, the aware. Chapter 67, verse 13 and 14. Chapter 20, warning. The Almighty created us for only one purpose, to serve Him. Men live their whole lives chasing after phantoms and illusions. We are consumed by our fears, passions, and vain desires. It is only when we rise above our vain desires that we can fulfill our true purpose. Many men understand that they are here for a purpose. They know that they have to attempt the steep path towards God, but they delay and put off the task at hand. We need to understand the urgency of aligning our will to the will of the Almighty. We do not have infinite time on hand. The day of judgment is coming. Do not be one of those who puts off action and then be filled with regrets when the opportunity has passed. I exhort you to do your utmost to serve God. It is true that God guides whom He wills, but He has also proclaimed that He will not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. He has examiners before Him and after Him, keeping it by the command of God. God changes not what is with a people until they change what is in their souls. And when God wills evil for a people, there is no repelling it, and they have besides Him no ally. Chapter 13, verse 11. If you are desirous of right guidance, then I implore you to not put off the matter any longer. Begin by sincerely repenting to God, work righteous deeds, and pray to God for guidance. Shun evil deeds and wrestle with your inner desires. This is the only way. The Quran leads towards faith and shows the right path. It would be folly to forsake this great gift from God and remain heedless and without guidance. Await they, save that God and the angels should come to them in the shadows of the clouds, and the matter be settled? And unto God are matters referred. And if thou couldst see when they are set before the fire, and say, would that we were sent back, we would not repudiate the proofs of our Lord, but would be among the believers. Chapter 6, verse 27. And the day he gathers them will be as though they had tarried only an hour of the day. They will recognize one another. Those will have lost who repudiated the meeting with God, and they were not rightly guided. Chapter 10, verse 45. And think thou not that God is unmindful of what the wrongdoers do. He but grants them respite unto a day wherein the eyes will stare, straining forward, their heads uplifted, unable to look away, and their hearts void. Chapter 14, verse 42 and 43. And the law will be sent down, and thou wilt see the evildoers apprehensive what is therein, and they will say, woe is us! What law is this that leaves out neither a small thing nor a great thing, save has taken it into account? And they will find what they did present, and thy Lord wrongs no one. Chapter 18, verse 49. And warn thou them of the day of regret, when the matter is concluded, but they are in heedlessness, and they do not believe. Chapter 19, verse 39. And had we destroyed them by a punishment before it, they would have said, our Lord, O that thou hadst but sent to us a messenger, so we might have followed thy proofs before we were humbled and disgraced. Chapter 20, verse 134. Nigh to men draws the reckoning, and they are in heedlessness disinclined. Chapter 21, verse 1. And the day the trumpet will be blown, whoso is in the heavens and the earth will be in terror, save who God wills, and all will come to him abased. Chapter 27, verse 87. The hour is coming, there is no doubt thereof, but most men do not believe. Chapter 40, verse 59. We warn you of a near punishment, the day a man will look on what his hands have sent before him, and the one who spurns guidance by clear virtue will say, would that I were dust. Chapter 78, verse 40. Conclusion. I hope that my presentation of the numerous and diverse arguments in the Quran provide you with an impetus to sincerely and diligently study it and question the beliefs you are born into. Time is short. No man knows if you will live to see tomorrow. I urge you, do not defer this grave matter any longer, but to strive with all your might to gain certainty in order to follow your purpose. Our creation is but a trial by God, so he can reward the virtuous with paradise. Man has been granted a noble station, even above the angels, if he uses his reason. I ask you to use this great gift from God to differentiate between truth and falsehood. We are invited by God to ponder his proofs by using our reason, and thereby come to an unshakable belief in him. Only then can we ever hope to serve the one true God and attain everlasting bliss. The worst of beasts in the sight of God are the deaf, the dumb, those who do not reason. Chapter 8, verse 22. May God guide you to his straight path. Peace be upon you.